Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Well, the sad news is here of the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, and I want to take a look at the intonation that was used to tell us that she died. This intonation was not only used for that purpose, actually it was used to show us that there was a big problem. Now, as I mentioned to you before, intonation is used to pass information regardless of words. Yesterday, I first knew that something was wrong, not because of the words, but because of the intonation. I could hear that the newscaster's voice had become very soft, and also his tones were all in a downward trend. For example, news is coming in of the Queen's failing health. It is indeed very sad that the families are gathering at Buckingham Palace. Now we're just waiting for the news of Prince Charles to arrive. We have no further updates at this time. However, it is known that the Queen's health is very, very serious. As soon as we receive further information, we will let you know, of course. Now, that kind of reporting, that kind of intonation changes moods. And I thought to myself, ooh, that doesn't sound good. But not because of the words, but because of the way in which the words were presented to me. If you compare that to how I usually start my podcasts, welcome to another Teacher Joseph podcast. You can hear there that that's a very different intonation. It's one of intrigue, it's one of welcome, and it's one of affirmation. But this idea of trying to change someone's mood by talking lower and talking more genteel is a little bit fake, I would say. It is something we use in the UK, but do you honestly think that all of us care enough for 1 month to be using that kind of intonation? Of course not. Part of the problem is that she is our supreme leader. I know that it's arguable how much power she has and uses, but she's also the supreme leader of the BBC, supreme leader of the churches, and many, many other organisations. So it's a little bit strange, though, that we go into this kind of Victorian style chatting. Oh yes, using slow voices. I mean, it's really a way of keeping us down. I tried to put on the radio earlier and I was told the radio today is having special programming. I mean, really. I've got to go to YouTube for my favourite songs. So, of course, everyone's maybe saddened by the news, but I don't think many of us will be, bursting into tears first thing in the morning. But of course, death of anyone is sad, not only the Queen. And many other people, I'm sure, have died at the same time, and they won't receive the publicity and coverage that the Queen has. Anyway, another question is, what happens now? Well, that's a very good question. Automatically, by default, Charles becomes king, and he'll be known as Charles III, and his consort, not his concert, his consort, that's his wife, Camilla, she automatically becomes queen. So, from this moment, they are king and queen, and they will be officially installed at Westminster Abbey at a coronation, probably in a few weeks. So that's their part of all of this. The Queen, of course, will have a state funeral. She will be lying in state. That means that her body will be placed in a church, and many people will go to that church to pay respects to her. It may be an open coffin if people want to look at her face. It may be closed. It depends on how she died and what the family feel at the time. But that will last at least a week. And they will probably have books in every town hall across the UK for us to go and sign. It's like an obituary book to say how sorry we feel. We don't say anything, we just sign it. And then those books are presented to King Charles. We also will have to have new money because all of our money, coins and banknotes show the Queen's head, or at least they do in England. In Northern Ireland and in Scotland we have local money which show local scenes, so they don't all show the Queen's head. Our passports as well have the Queen's signature inside them, stating that the Queen allows us to come and go because, after all, it's her territory. I don't think they'll force us to replace those. They probably will be okay. Charles needs to be appointed as probably the new head of the BBC. The coronation, I think, is mainly for the head of the church because they will be head of the church as well, whatever that means these days. I mean, the Church of England doesn't really have any kind of absolute set ideals about Christianity. The Queen was also the supreme leader of the Church of Scotland, the Church of Wales, and I think the Church of Ireland as well. But that's kind of a new thing because of the way our churches are here. She's only recently became head of all of them, but she was always head of the Church of England. So after the coronation, she will automatically assume those roles, I guess. The king will automatically assume those roles, I mean. Okay, so that's what happens next. So this whole thing with the black ties and the lower intonation is going to last for around a month, so I won't be watching much TV because it's just so depressing. I mean, it's dysfunctional, isn't it? Isn't it very Victorian to behave that way? But some people are very deeply affected by it, and it's a way of forcing the mood of the people, which I really don't like. I mean, the media have a little bit too much power over my life as it is, and why would I want to give it more? About Charles being king, well, I noticed that the senior royals all gathered at Windsor, not at Windsor. Where did they gather? Yes, they all gathered at Balmoral, where the Queen died yesterday, and Prince Harry came late. I'm guessing that's because he's not a senior royal anymore, so he wouldn't be allowed to participate in that discussion or that plan of what happens next. I mean, it's all planned anyway. Of course, it's been planned for a long time about what happens when the Queen dies. But one knowledgeable thing, an interesting thing about the Queen's death is that because she's died, the roles will change. So, for example, Harry's children are not in direct line to the throne. So because the Queen was their great-grandmother, they weren't princes. So because the Queen is now dead, the King is their grandfather, the King and Queen are their grandparents, so that means that they automatically get the title of prince. So anyone who's related on that level will become a prince, and the title of Prince of Wales, I think, will also default to William if it's going to be used once Charles becomes king. Well, he's already king, but it's something else that might be happening. So you can expect to see a few titles changing because it's all about the grandfather being king, not the great-grandmother being queen anymore. And that's it. Okay, let's just do a quick intonation before we finish so you can hear how this was presented. I'll just play you a general clip, okay?
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. The palace has just issued this statement. It says the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen Consort will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow.
I'd forgotten how much that news presenter looks like my postman. Isn't it interesting how people can look alike? Well, anyway, sorry. Yes, about intonation. Yes, he was using a very slow intonation to tell us that. But it was actually much brighter than it was earlier in the day. And that's because at that moment, he actually had news to give us. So he was telling us, the King and Queen Consort, yeah, they will stay at Balmoral tonight. So he had something to say. But the rest of the day, it was just speculation. Oh, now we have to think about what could have happened to the Queen. Let's listen to James Corden talking about it on his show last night. Of course, what they did with his Late Late Show is they stopped running the opening credits, so it was kind of like a silent opening of the TV show. Sorry for laughing, but really, I mean, is it necessary? Has life really stopped? Okay, maybe for one night, but not for the next month. Please. Okay, so let's listen to how he handled it. Now, I want you to pay particular attention to his intonation because his voice is coming downwards with certain words, okay? So here we are.
Good evening. We, of course, heard the news today that Queen Elizabeth had passed away aged 96. I, like the rest of the world, am so sad tonight, but also so thankful and grateful to the Queen for the most incredible service and leadership that she has shown during all of our lifetimes. All day you will have been hearing statistics about her reign as the longest ruling monarch in British history. She served on the throne for 70 years. She is the only Queen most of us have ever known. She has seen 14 US presidents during her reign, and on Tuesday, just on Tuesday, welcomed her 15th Prime Minister. We viewed her as a mortal, an essential part of the fabric of our world. There is, of course, an outpouring of grief and love across the globe. She was universally adored.
Okay, I think that's quite enough from him. So, his spaces between his words tell you that something is wrong. He is using spaces to tell you that this is something you really should pay attention to and that something isn't right, because that's why I always encourage my students not to use spaces, because it emphasizes, it tells you something that isn't right. And it's really important that you understand that using spacing and intonation coming down brings about a sense of seriousness and that something is a little bit wrong. Even if I didn't hear his words, I would know he was talking about something quite serious. At least now they actually have something to report. I mean, that makes it better, right? They can tell us, the Queen has died and the King will fly back to London tonight. So it gets them away from this really downbeat, the Queen has died. And also, if you'd heard the commentary yesterday before she died, it is known that the Queen is in very, very poor health. That kind of stuff is really weird and dysfunctional, even for me. It's like a Victorian thing. But in fairness to them, I mean, no king or queen has died in recent years. This queen has been the queen all throughout my life, my parents' lives, and my grandparents' lives. So I think that's why it hurts a little bit, It's how it hits us, because even psychologically, we remember that she's been there for at least 3 generations. She took the throne in, I believe it was, let me think, 1952 she became Queen. Yeah. She married in 1947. She became Queen in 1952, and she lasted all the way up until yesterday. Nice, isn't it? Wow. I'm sure wherever she is, she's happy. Right, so that's all from me for today. Let's hope tomorrow we have some better news. If you can review stuff from yesterday about intonation, if you did hear any news reports, please do try to tune in just so you can hear what intonation they were using. Thank you. See you. Bye.